Hi there, Vicky McClifty here from AM Healing My Soul TV. Today I'm speaking with Melissa Griffiths. Hi Melissa.
Hi Vicky.
As we know, this show is all about helping people who have suffered grief in some way in their life. And Melissa, you have such a story to tell. You've had a lot of grief in your life. And
yes.
Where do I start? I mean, really, it was when you were young as well. So,
It's just when I was young, through being bullied as a child, through going to Boys Brigade, being bullied there, and also at school, sort of indirectly at the time, having those experiences hung on a hook, or, which, okay, boys do that stuff to other boys, but at the time you don't realise the effect it will have on you later in life.
Yeah.
And it does play a part in your life, and lack of self-confidence that's only come in the last year. So and it's all little things that build up.
So you grew up as a boy in your youth. You
Yes.
were a boy. What was your life like then?
As a boy, growing up in Auckland, I was always this sort of shy, awkward sort of child, I guess, slim kid. Didn't have many friends at primary school or intermediate school. Got picked on quite a bit and bullied when I was in intermediate school. Hung on a hook, which a bit traumatic for a young kid. And when I went to Boys Brigade, I wanted to be with the girls brigade, not quite understanding why, and my punishment was to be dipped underwater. Boys Brigade leader made the other boys dip me upside down underwater, and as a result of that, like, I've always not been comfortable around water, and it's taken years, probably taken years to overcome that. But I know, like, it still affected me looking back now subconsciously. Like a month later, I was nearly drowned. I was in the water at a public swimming pool in Auckland, and it's just, it stays with you. You don't realise it stays with you, and that's also perhaps because I didn't know how to swim as well, but obviously I still think there's something subconscious there linking the two. Linking the two.
Any sort of trauma.
And parents used to fight a lot, and as a lonely child you're left to your own devices a lot, so you're sort of around violence, anger a lot, and or grief of mum's upset, so you sort of left to your own devices, and when you try and interfere, you're just some told to go away, so it's difficult to deal with.
How did your parents cope with how you were, like your behaviour of wanting, not knowing where you stood in society? And
well, I guess they didn't really know about my being transgender until 3 years or so ago when I told them, and started talking to them about it. And I've had discussions with Mum about it, and told Dad before he died. And Mum she says she respects my decision but doesn't necessarily accept it, so and that's what I found. Some family members will be okay with it, others won't, and same with the friends, and they just drop away. They just don't see them anymore.
Which is sad.
That's because it's too much for them, or it's outside their little box, their world to deal with. So
I mean, we're all the same. We're all in this together, and I think it's a lack of, maybe it's fear, like people aren't educated, and I know that's where you're coming from with what you want to do is to educate people.
Yeah, that's right.
Getting back to the grief too, like you've had so much in your life, but when your father and your cousin passed away, how was that for you?
Well, that was within a relatively short period of time, like 2014, so seeing them both in hospital, and especially your cousin I hadn't seen for a long time. They both had cancer, and like 6 months later my cousin's gone in 2014, then a year later Dad's gone, so it's in such a short space of time dealing with that grief, and that was catalyst for me, after seeing them before they died in 2014, to make the decision to live full time as a female. And you're just going through the motions, and you're trying to figure everything out. It's a bit like a fog, and then you sort of come out of it and make a decision, and then right, I'm going to transition, and despite everything that's going on, like, I can't live part-time anymore.
So you realise the significance of what life was for you.
Yeah.
You know, that was your catalyst to actually follow through with what you had been a little bit about doing in the past.
Yeah. Living part-time. So.
Yeah. Because grief can be the turning point to living your life more meaningfully.
Oh, of course it can, yeah.
It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the end of your life when
No,
someone dies. And I think that's what's so important, that people are aware that, you know, that there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
But also that to reach out for help.
Yeah,
you know?
Definitely. Reach out, talk to a friend, see a counsellor, talk to someone about it.
Because I think you're in such a negative state when you're going through grief. And I know what I was like, and I didn't feel like talking to anyone because it made it real somehow. Like I didn't want to actually face I didn't want to face the reality of what had happened in my own situation.
No, you don't. You just want it to go away. Pretend it hasn't happened.
That's it. And up goes the mask.
Yeah.
You know, you go out and people say, "Oh, how you going?"
Oh, great. Where's the wine bottle?
That's right. Coffee.
Wine, coffee.
Yeah. What's your life like now in comparison to what it was before you lost your father and your cousin?
Well, I guess before growing up in Auckland and living in Melbourne, I was probably shy and having grief in your childhood, not realising how it affects you in your adulthood. And like as I grew up older, obviously I lost my grandparents, but having that sort of grief and not dealing with it, and never felt comfortable in my own skin and confident and always shy. I could never look people in the eye. People said just be looking down and wouldn't look people in the eye like I'm doing to you now.
Yeah, you do a pretty good job.
But before, and if you saw me even a couple of years ago, different.
Man, it's really been your turning point in your life. It's made you stronger and I think you start to want to be able to help people.
You do,
because of what you've gone through, and you've got so much experience. You've covered a lot of bases. You've got domestic violence, bullying in school, you know, transgender, transitioning to, you know, from male to female. That's massive. And then losing your dad, losing your cousin at the same time. It's just mammoth growth that you've experienced.
And I think going through that makes you stronger.
How were you before the death of your cousin and your father in comparison to how you are now?
Well, I guess I was sort of trolling along. I wasn't confident. I was shy. I didn't have that direction in life, and I was still living part-time then, and hadn't thought about being true to myself, so didn't consider that at all, and not able to look people in the eye. Whereas now I can, I'm more confident, so I can do that and be comfortable in my own skin. Before I wasn't, and still felt awkward. And that gets back to your childhood, like all things happen to you as a child, and then grief you go through, and even seeing your grandparents die, like you know, it all accumulates, all that stuff. Or if you lose a friend, and
if you don't go through the grieving process, it can just build up and build up and build up in your life.
And then suddenly when you do have grief, a lot of people, they just can't handle it. That's where they go crazy or even kill themselves, sadly, because instead of reaching out to someone, this has never happened before, I don't know how to deal with it, just be honest and say, look, this has never happened to me.
If you've got these emotions that are stored in you from the past, that you've been affected by people, and so you've got these beliefs, they block you to who you really are.
They do.
And if you can unblock those pipes or create new ones and lay those new pipes as to your new beliefs, it's possible.
That's right, just unlayering the old way of being and then creating a new subconscious, new conscious way of belief.
Do you think that there's a bit of a thing with society that if you reach out for help, that it's a sign of weakness?
There is. I think a lot of people like a lot of mentality. Oh, you're going to be tough, and
particularly here in Australia. I'm not sure around the rest of the world, but it's like get over it and, march on.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, march on and you'll be right, mate.
Yeah, you'll be right, mate.
Yeah.
Have
take
another
a pill
four,
and-
have another 4-inch goal.
Yeah. That seems to be the thing that society expects. It's like when you get the flu, you go and take a Codral and that will go away. It's not like check in with who you are, check in with why are you sick. Usually it's because you're run down, you're not checking in, connecting with yourself.
That's right.
When you're not following, like if you're on a path where you're doing something you're not enjoying, and you're feeling miserable all the time, which happens with grief. If you're feeling miserable all the time, you're attracting that. You've got that lower energy, so you are going to get sick.
Yeah.
A lot of people do get sick when they're going through grief, and you've really got to be kind to yourself and look after yourself.
You do,
Yeah.
It's another thing. I never used to be kind to myself, take time out.
Yeah, but no one gives you advice to do that.
No, they don't.
No. And so we all go from day to day, march from day to day with what we're doing.
That's right.
And totally not connected with who we are if we're living that way.
Oh, you got a cough, Jimmy. Oh,
Yeah.
Right out of the pub. Get him a scotch.
Yeah.
That'll fix you, Jimmy.
Not
You'll be
looking
right,
at
mate.
Yeah.
Never mind the fact that you probably should be in bed.
Yeah, that's
Resting.
right. That's right.
Never mind the fact he's probably worked overtime.
Yeah.
Worked 7 days a week for the last couple of months. That's why he's sick.
And hating what he's doing.
Yeah.
It's so important. And I think when you go through grief and you go through the whole transition of grieving, that you realise what's important in your life.
You do.
And you realise that those little things that used to irritate you really aren't that important.
No, they're not. No.
Because what does it mean? I mean, nothing. It's just insignificant, really. What is important is who you are, who you connect with, and living from your heart.
That's right.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
Which sounds like what you're doing, Melissa.
It is.
There's ways that you can get around how you feel when people come at you from a negative perspective.
You do.
Yeah.
You realise they've got a negative mindset. So, and that just the environment they're brought up in as well. Haven't invested in themselves as adults to change their behaviour. May think their behaviour is normal even. A lot of people think hitting their wives is normal, is acceptable behaviour. It's not.
No.
Or going down the pub every night getting blind. Whilst partners at home looking after the kids. All that sort of behaviour goes on, and we just don't address it enough. And
No. I think that's it. It's all of the different variations of the masks of society. I think there needs to be that awareness there, that education for people.
I had anxiety and even panic attacks when I was transitioning, and sort of looking back, it just comes upon you. And anxiety is something a lot of people really struggle with and find hard to deal with or talk to someone about how to deal with it. So it's easier to get a bottle of wine or a couple of bottles and knock it off.
Antidepressants. Just take a pill and it'll all go away.
Yeah, that's right.
It isn't that simple, is
But
it?
Because
it doesn't allow you to actually experience the emotions.
That's right. So you're on antidepressants, knock off a couple of bottles of wine every night, and then next morning you're into the coffee.
That's it.
And you create another cycle, create another set of problems for yourself.
Yeah, and then you wonder why you don't feel...
You feel down, so then you go into the valley and you'll get some up.
It just goes on and on.
Like a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
Because you're not prepared to address it or talk to someone about it.
Yeah. So what sort of advice would you give a young boy or girl, whoever, that are going through any sort of transition, like feelings and things like that, and then also like as teenagers and then young adults, like what sort of advice would you give someone?
Firstly, to talk to their parents if they're able to, or talk to a counsellor if at school, if they don't feel comfortable doing that. It's important they speak to their parents and then speak to a psychologist and start getting that support and working through those feelings and why they're coming up, and to determine if they do have like gender identity of the opposite sex to what their body is that they were assigned at birth with. It's just getting support, talking about it.
And knowing that there is support out there.
Knowing there's support
and that's
out
where
there.
you're coming in. to doing it too, like with your foundation.
Yeah, and like there is some support out there now. I think it's just raising awareness. There is already information out there, but if you're not aware of it or understand what you're going through, you may not necessarily even be aware there's Transgender Victoria or Pride Diversity. You may not even be aware, or the Gender Centre.
There is that people need to be aware that there is help. But also the education about what is right and what is wrong. People don't know what to say, and it's. I mean, as I said, you've covered so many bases with your whole life that a lot of people wouldn't know what to say to you about a lot of things because you've come through so much in your life that it's made you who you are today, and you're here now to help so many people with what you journeyed through.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's really exciting stuff. I appreciate you coming on the show today and sharing your story, and I know that you're going to help so many people. So good luck with your journey ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks Melissa.
Thanks.